Greetings, ALC small groups. My name is Tyler Bueno, and if you've been here for a while, you know that means that there's probably some sort of nerd reference in this teaching. Because today we are talking about Holy Takedown, how to turn the tables to victory. So growing up, I loved superheroes. They were my everything. They were the thing that taught me what was right. And for some kids, that's Superman. Some kids, it's Batman. Some kids, it's Spider-Man. But for me, it was the Power Rangers. They had the helmets, the suits, the Zords. They had it all. They were so cool. And my favorite costume growing up that I would put on constantly until it ripped was my Red Ranger costume. It was a cheap little pajama spandex thing with a cheap little mask that had a string behind it and a little belt. And it wasn't that great, but I loved it. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But my mom made this costume for me, and it was the armor of God. It was this plastic knight costume that she had taken Sharpie and written the labels of the different pieces of the armor of God on there. And as a kid, I didn't really think much of it. I didn't think it was that cool. But as an adult, I look at both and I'm like, I've got the Power Ranger costume and I've got the armor of God, and they're one and the same to me. Because the armor of God has become my power suit. And so I know what you're thinking, Tyler. What is the armor of God? Well, I'm glad you asked. So let's look at Ephesians 6, verse 10 through 18. This is the NLT version. A final word. Be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in the dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor so that you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then, after the battle, you will still be standing firm. Stand your ground, putting on the belt of truth and the body armor of God's righteousness. For shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news so that you will be fully prepared. In addition to all of these, hold up the shield of faith to stop the fiery arrows of the devil. Put on salvation as your helmet and take out the sword of the Spirit, which is God's word. Pray in the Spirit at all times and on every occasion. Stay alert and be persistent in your prayers for all believers everywhere. So we see that Paul is writing to the Ephesians, and at the end of this letter, he's telling them, armor up. If he was talking to 5-year-old Tyler, he would look at me and he would say, it's morphin' time. See, Paul does a really good job at explaining what each part of the armor is. So what I want to talk to you today about is how we can use those parts of the armor. So we're going to break these down into 3 sections, and each section will have a couple of different pieces. Number 1, not a battle of flesh and blood. That's very important that we remember that this is not a battle against flesh and blood. Verse 12, for we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of an unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. So to use the armor, we have to remember it's a spiritual armor. It's not physical. I can't fight crime with it, but I can fight these principalities with it. We have to remember that. See, a little story real quick. I went on a trip with my wife and a couple of friends recently, and we're all going, 4 of us were going in a car, 2 other ones were going in a different car. And my wife beforehand said we should bring our Bibles with us. And I was like, okay, perfect. Let's pack them. We didn't tell anybody. We just packed them. We put them in the car. And that bag got put in the trunk of the car. Well, on this trip was me and my wife, our friend who was the one driving, and then we had another friend who was with us, and that friend has anxiety with car rides, a little bit more than what we knew. And as the trip went on, things got a little bit worse and not the greatest. However, we noticed that when this friend would get close to that bag, because that bag went from the trunk to up in the car, and it moved around, but each time that bag was close to that friend the anxiety would go down and almost into like a comatose state. And I want to be clear. I am not saying that the Bible physically being in the car is what caused this. What I'm saying is I believe our obedience and faith and bringing those Bibles was the Lord protecting us from anything that could go wrong, because that friend took over the wheel a couple of times and we could have ended up in a ditch or somewhere bad. It was not good. And so I want to say that again. I am not saying having the physical Bible in the car was like, oh, that's what it was. No, it was our faith and obedience that protected us, that put up that shield, and the sword of the Spirit was used. So let's look at it. Because Paul states in this verse that we are at war with authorities of an unseen world. We can't see what anxiety looks like. We can only see what it does to a person. And we saw that firsthand, what the anxiety was doing to that person. And so the battle wasn't with that person. The battle was with the principality over them. See, we could have yelled at that friend. We could have gotten mad. We could have gotten irate, and it could have made things a lot worse. We could have ended up in danger, but instead we remained calm and we remained in the Spirit. We didn't take out our Bibles until we got to the Airbnb. Again, nobody knew we had them with us but us and the Lord. So it really made me think that in battle, sometimes you don't even have to unsheathe the sword of the Spirit. Sometimes you don't have to pull out the Bible. Sometimes the activation comes from your faith. Keep that in mind. So number 2, stand your ground. Stand your ground by putting on the belt of truth and the body armor of God's righteousness. For shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news so that you will be fully prepared. Where the shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit are the offense and defense, these next 3 pieces also have similar properties. So let's start and build up this suit. We have the body armor of righteousness. In some translations, it's the breastplate. But honestly, I really like the body armor because body armor covers the entire body, whereas the breastplate is just here. That's besides the point. So going back to my Power Rangers costume, right? The suit is why they were protected in battle from physical damage. So let's look even deeper. There are 2 areas that the enemy attacks us most. That's going to be our mind, which we'll talk about in a bit, and then our heart. The body armor protects the heart. Our heart belongs to God, but we have the free will to take that away and lose the protection. It's vital that we allow God to protect it, because without it, without our hearts, we will die. And it's the same for our souls. So let's move on to the next piece. It is the belt of truth. Every superhero has a utility belt. And for the Power Rangers, theirs carries a sidearm and sometimes their morpher. And for the original Power Rangers, it was this giant belt buckle that they would just wear when they fought. It's the same concept for us, right? When we wear God's truth on us, people see it. If this were the belt buckle that went on the belt of truth, you would see that guy's a follower of Christ. That guy knows what he's doing. And it's the same concept. When we wear the belt of truth, yes, it keeps it all together, but it also, the truth shines through us. Keep that in mind. And lastly, the peace that comes from the good news. We wear those as shoes. Because legit, if you didn't wear the peace of the good news, you would be stepping on spiritual Legos all the time. Footwear is very important. Lastly, this is the 3rd point. When it feels like you're surrounded. So in 2020, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And I'll be honest with you, it was a time that I was not with God. I was not walking with Him. I loved Him, or I said I did, but I was doing things that were not of God. And so I wasn't wearing the armor, and I was allowing lies of the enemy to get to me and tell me things that were not true. And the honest truth is, this was an up and down for a long time. I eventually decided to step out in faith and reactivate the armor, to become that little kid who wanted to be a superhero again. And I realized how the enemy was attacking me. It wasn't my heart directly. He wasn't attacking my heart. He was attacking my brain. He was attacking my mind. I wasn't wearing the helmet of salvation. we don't think about it. We don't think about how important our mind is. We don't think how important it is to wear a helmet. There's so many people who ride motorcycles and don't wear helmets. But the thing is, it's the most fragile part of our body. It's the thing that can be manipulated the most. So imagine with me, if you will, right? You are in battle. You're fighting the enemy. The problem is you can't see him because he's bouncing up and down, left and right. He's invisible, but you know he's firing, and he finally is able to get a shot at your head, and he throws daggers of depression and anxiety at you. And when he can do that, he'll convince you that you don't need the body armor anymore. You took those hits like a champ. You're fine. And as soon as you take that body armor off, your heart's exposed. So when you wear the helmet, it's important. Because when you wear the helmet, example again, you're going to feel those arrows, right? You're going to feel them. But you're just going to feel them. You won't be affected by it. Again, when we feel the attack, that doesn't mean we're affected by the attack. Whew, sorry, that was very personal. Because when you have all the pieces, right? When you have the whole collection of God's armor, you are no longer surrounded by the enemy. You are surrounded by God. You are protected on all sides. There is nothing the enemy can do to you that can make you waver. So I want to encourage you. Every day when you wake up, you grab the sword of the Spirit, you put on the body armor, and you walk in peace. Because guys, there's a war happening out there. It's a war we can't see, but it's happening all the time. We walk out and it's a battleground. So I'm going to ask you, how are you going to fight? How are you going to fight the battle? Love you guys. I've got some questions down below. Have a good night.